Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. If you work with social media, then you're measuring for engagement. You're spending money to get likes and shares and tweets. So for someone considering your brand, what is the ROI of a smile, or even better yet, a laugh? So similar to how you'd ask for any other campaign, do you have the right kind of content? And maybe even more importantly, is it on the right kind of channel? What began as fake news by The Onion evolved into funny branded content created by the Onion Labs for brands like Intel, Sprint, Xfinity, Pizza Hut, Ace Hardware, Barbasol, and so many more. The Onion Labs is the creative agency behind, as they say, content that doesn't suck, and it's smart content on behalf of brands. Quite simply, comedy is what they do and the content that your audience actually wants to watch. Hassan Ali is a creative lead at the Onion Labs, and he has a brilliant mind for marketing. I've had the pleasure of hearing him both speak at digital marketing conferences in front of thousands, as well as the pleasure of working one-on-one with him directly on campaigns. He and his team have produced some of the smartest and funniest content that you'll ever find. So put on your swimmers and let's go swimming with some funny sharks on A Shark's Perspective. All right, Hassan, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective. I'm really glad to have you on the show. The work that you've done at the Onion Labs has been fantastic, but I'm kind of curious, when you were a little boy, a wee lad, and you started thinking about what you wanted to be when you grew up, which was, I know you're still not there yet. What job was that? I mean, I think you're kind of a kid at heart, I would imagine, with what you do as a career.
Yes, well, thank you, Kenneth. Well, Shark, thank you, Shark, I should say, for having me. We're on that level now where we can call each other our nicknames.
Yeah. I'm your spirit animal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, what are those little fish that go on the side of the sharks?
Remorse.
I forget what those are called,
yeah,
but I'll be one of Yeah, I'll be one of those. Yeah. No, it's really pumped to be on your show here. When I was a kid, I really, really fell in love with music videos, and that was my ultimate aspiration. It wasn't an astronaut. It wasn't Superman or anything like that. It was to be a music video director, and I just loved. First of all, I just love the aesthetics of some of, growing up in the 80s and 90s, the aesthetics of some of those music videos, especially Hype Williams had some amazing music videos with Missy Elliott and stuff like that. And that aesthetic for a kid, kids are so visual. How my parents allowed me to watch MTV, I don't know, but that visual was just so compelling to me. And also music, I've always loved music, so the hybrid of visuals and music was something I really, really fell in love with.
And yet I heard that on a previous report from you that Busta Rhymes video changed your life forever.
Yes, it did. Busta Rhymes video absolutely changed my life because it was so just genre bending and weird, and I mean even the camera work. There was a huge fisheye lens on it. If anyone wants to go check it out on YouTube, I mean it's just a very, very visually compelling music video that caught my attention. I was like, I like this. I like this a lot.
Well, I'm just proud of you for being the one person out of that era that didn't say Thriller. So.
Oh, that's Thriller. Yeah.
Kudos to you for going Busta Rhymes. So when you look at where you are now as a creative lead at the Onion Labs, I mean, do you ever feel like today that you're just kind of laughing at all the career counselors and teachers who told you to be a little more serious in your role, that you wouldn't make it? Or you ever think about just sending them a postcard with one of the funny lines that we see on the Onion?
I think that everyone gets the whole you might want to try something a bit more realistic or sensible or in your security zone or safe zone or something like that. I can't be the only one who has had that, and I really do value the adults who looked out for me as a kid and growing up and stuff like that. I mean, one thing that I think I think that I've always found that adults, the folks, even my own folks, I grew up in a very like traditionally South Asian parents are the kind of parents who would push you to become doctors and lawyers and these traditional professions. And my folks were very, very open and liberal to, all sorts of things as long as it's a living and I can support myself and, buy cat food for my cats and stuff like that. So I think like I'm really grateful for some of the early support that I did get. But yeah, sometimes it is nice to think about the doubters who were there from the get-go and say like, yep, well, I kind of proved you wrong.
Yeah.
I think everyone can relate to that.
If he'd only applied himself, look where he could have gotten. So
yeah.
Well, and I know it's got to be amazing to work at the Onion Labs. I mean, that kind of agency is different. Probably even more creative with a little more license. You're not held back in some regards, but when you're working at the Onion Labs, is it different than you've seen from other places as far as being more creative? Is everybody there creative? Is there like a Janice in accounting who's like fed up with all you guys just acting silly and nuts?
I mean, everyone, and I should preface that, I can't take credit for any of the funny headlines that are written in The Onion.
Right.
That those are done by a great editorial team that are like 2,000 times funnier than I am, and they are just so dedicated to the craft of satire and making all of America laugh. My division is the branded content division, which is
Right.
still funny and still a lot of fun, way more fun than any agency I've worked at, which is it's a great thing. I'm very grateful for. I mean, I think everyone here, everyone all the way down to, like you said, accounting, is funny and brings life and makes being in the office fun. And I think personally, I actually wrote a post about this on medium.com yesterday about how I was having lunch with my acquaintance, and he was like, oh yeah, I work in data, I'm not very creative. And I thought, like, no, everyone is creative. It doesn't matter if you he works in data or if you work in a traditional job like consulting or law or something like that. Everyone is creative in their own capacity. If it means, maybe it means finding a shortcut to do a certain task at work. I mean, that's creativity. There's creativity in every job, I feel like, and it's just a matter of you putting a spin on the norm or the way things have always been done. It doesn't have to be necessarily like paint and an easel to be creative. I think everyone has that level of creativity within them.
I agree. I know you don't want to take credit for those kind of posts on the Onion, but I will brag. Anybody can go look at the Onion Labs or onionlabs website and see the types of branded content that you do produce. That's hilarious. And I've had the pleasure of seeing that team at work, and I don't want to say it's a serious business, but it's there's a level of seriousness applied to comedy that you guys do with perfection. And I wanted to talk a little bit about both how can humor boost a brand?
How it boosts a brand, I mean, the value proposition is something that isn't 2018. This goes back a while. I mean, even in the early days of the maybe not quite as far back as like the Mad Men style or whatever, but humor in advertising has been around for a long time, especially when advertising became so saturated, when people were just overwhelmed by content and things and billboards and whatnot. You need to set yourself apart and get your product or service apart in an interesting or attention-getting way. And but in particular for us, like especially in the digital space is just one big like like going to Vegas and just having sensory overload with banners and with programmatic ads and whatnot. And so in terms of what we bring to the table, we bring that kind of native feel to things. So we do ads, if you want to call them that, in quotes, that feel very oniony and feel very much in line with the other Onion headlines you read on the site. But more than that, like even if it's within the Onion Labs or it's within your own brand, let's say you want to just infuse humor into your own brand message. I mean, humor brings relatability and a level of like, we get you. We don't take ourselves too seriously. It doesn't mean you have to be wacky. I've always been asked, so you probably don't do B2B, right? Because B2B stuff is pretty serious and it's not very funny. We've done a lot of B2B stuff. Some of my favorite stuff is B2B that I've worked on here. And is it like laugh out loud, hysterically funny? No, but it's very relatable. It's relatable and it's a clever spin on what is out there and what's kind of being said, the messaging that's being said in the category. So the boost for brands, really, I mean, there are Nielsen studies and whatnot that get less anecdotal about it. Like Nielsen studies show that, I think humor boosts brand affinity and purchase intent and like recall and stuff like that. I mean, I just work from a more anecdotal standpoint that people tend to really resonate with ads that kind of poke fun at either themselves or just have fun with pop culture or something like that. And the boost really does come, I think, in the end, you do end up having more memory for that brand, or you end up, when you're at the aisle or whatever, saying, yeah, that brand made me laugh. Their commercials are funny. I will give them my business.
So that couldn't set it up any better for what my next question was, which is how do you what's the differentiator for you guys when it's a B2B or B2C type campaign?
Mm-hmm. So to be very honest, just the target audience. In terms of how we brainstorm and how the humor should be different and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The kernel of truth is the common factor in all the stuff that we do. The kernel of truth of, let's say, a recruiting company that targets IT professionals, and they want content to target the IT professionals to sign up for their website. We'll look at what is the truth for that audience. What did they find relatable? It's probably that they're so much more computer savvy than the rest of the lay people that are out there. So whether it's millennial moms who order millennial moms who get Starbucks on the go or something like that, or IT professionals, you have to look at them and find what is the kernel of truth in there. And then the humor is based on what the appetite of the client is. What best fits their sensibilities, what fits, their existing style and whatnot.
So one thing I love about the Onion, to me, that's always seemed to be your Onion voice. I've never seen an ad that didn't scream the Onion's personality primarily in delivering that message. You're not sticking your logo on somebody else's brand to say, it's funny in air quotes and then just sort of rubber stamp it. You guys are not paid, social influencers. I think that's one of the things that's helped me and probably a lot of your readers and followers respect about the Onion's voice. What do you typically say no to? This is something we can't do or shouldn't do.
I mean, I think that, we don't do, for some of the reasons you had mentioned, we don't do blatant headlines that are involving brands, like literally putting in a brand in a headline and making a funny onion headline based off of that. There's a separation of church and state there, where editorial team does what they do best, and where my team comes into play, and on the team that I'm on, we really support editorial. So they'll come up with a funny headline, and if a brand wants something onion-ish, oniony, we can work on a video or something like that channels that, but isn't literally like an onion headline. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we say no to. But that also allows for a lot more brand safety and brand control, to be honest, because then we're able to, my team, the team that I'm on, are all seasoned, advertising copywriters and creatives and social media pros, and so we kind of have a much better savvy on what content is going to really do well for the KPIs and the objective of the brand.
So I think one of the things too that really fits that interests me is, I know your Facebook for the Onion has 6.5 million, I think in that neighborhood, million plus YouTube followers, I think 20 million Twitter followers, something like that. I know I'm probably getting the stats off. You can check that, but you have the right audience to deliver that kind of content. And I think a lot of agencies try to sometimes introduce creative and try to have humor. I know I've been pitched it on multiple occasions myself, but to your credit and to the Onion's credit, your content is obviously stronger and funnier, and that's why you have such a big following. And it's really that right audience setting. If you introduce an Onion type video for some of this branded content that you guys produce on your own social channels, it's very likely going to fall on some deaf ears. But when you release it on the Onion's network, or part of that bigger Fusion Media network where, you've got 6.5 million Facebook followers, it's a really strong testing ground to help, let that brand's voice speak to an audience they may not be able to reach. And depending on how it goes, a brand can piggyback on that. So when your approach with these kind of ideas, how do you look at the audience where you share those videos, and what kind of agencies are pulling you in and saying, we want you to produce this and put it in a certain place? How do you start looking at it from an audience perspective and where to put the content?
Sure. And I think that the best thing that we can offer, in addition to the content, you had made a great point that, our content living on maybe a brand's, just solely without any context, living on a brand's social channels, while we do that quite a lot, and it does perform quite well, but it performs even better on our own channels, because there is a little context of like the conceit of the Onion, and people know what they're kind of signing up for.
Yeah.
And when we look at audience, I mean, the biggest the value proposition that we do have is that reach, beyond just the funny comedy minds that we have here. The reach, as you mentioned, and this is for many publishers of all sorts, have reach that a traditional media buy may not be able to get those eyeballs. So when, let's say if there is a particular, I don't know, if it's 30 to 35-year-old health nuts who really love being fit and active for some kind of new health drink or something like that, we can find, through targeting, we can find those people within our existing audience to be able to target that content to them. So that's a side of the house that I am very, very oblivious to. I just know the funnies, and I don't know the numbers and the targeting and stuff like that. But overall, the advantage for working with publishers versus just putting out your own content to the brand's existing followers is, like, you instantly add a bunch of jet fuel to the number of eyeballs and new potential customers you have looking at your content.
So, if you think about, it's hard for a lot of brands to get likes and positive comments and shares and retweets. Even really harder to help make their audience smile or laugh, which is what everybody's going for. So when you think about the ROI of laughter, what are some of the success stories that you've seen with past campaigns? How has it helped enhance brands?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of my personal favorite things that I've worked on here is it was for actually Allegra, the allergy medication, and it was a very, I have to give clients a lot of credit for wanting to take, calculated smart risks, because they wouldn't be coming to us if they didn't want something a little out of their comfort zone, and that would include you. I'm not just saying that, but when we worked together, you took a calculated risk and you felt like pushing the comfort zone. And this was another example where the Allegra, the concept was called the Petters, and it was just testimonial interviews that looked exactly like a typical allergy commercial, but it was people who love to pet things, right? So it's like, I love to pet my plants because I'm a normal, emotionally healthy person. That's why I love Allegra. And so it was just very, very bizarre things that people would pet, and the allergies of the dander or mold or pollen or whatever would get in the way of them petting whatever they wanted. And people were like, someone remixed one of the ads on YouTube because it was so weird and so interesting. People commented like, is this for real? Is this actually a thing?
Right.
And that's a great example how in that category, so you have a category that is pretty boilerplate, such as over-the-counter allergy medications. That is a great opportunity for if you are in a sector or in a market that is pretty boilerplate and doesn't really veer from the straight and narrow, to kind of do something a little unique and interesting and really, really stand out when you do that. Another example in that same vein, like one of the things we were actually up for, we're up for a Webby Award recently, was something we did for Ace Hardware, and it doesn't look like an ad at all. It is something that people loved and commented on and shared and got a lot of like affinity for Ace. Because it looked nothing like an ad, and the whole thing was Ace Hardware has this kind of guarantee called the extra mile promise, where if you buy something that isn't quite right, they will go the extra mile to make it right and make sure you get all the supplies you need for your home improvement project. And that title, Extra Mile Promise, sounded exactly like a rom-com that needed to be made when we heard it. And so the whole commercial, if you want to call it that, was a parody of a rom-com called The Extra Mile Promise, and it featured someone who was disappointed by all the other big box stores that let them down and left them at the altar, and this woman was like, I'm done with big box stores. I've totally had it. And then Ace swoops in and kind of is the knight in shining armor. And we do parody all the tropes of like, a best friend who is with this person and kind of running through the store, giggling and laughing and stuff like that. And so we just like parody all the tropes of a rom-com. And we were finalists for the Webbies, and not only that, it just got people really laughing and sharing that spot to people, saying like, make this a movie, make this actually a movie.
Hassan, it's just us girls here, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but pretty much every brand is trying to figure out the right way to engage millennials right now. And
yeah,
really good article last year, late last year, Inc. magazine wrote a great article, want to get in front of more millennials, take a page out of the Onion's playbook. So why do you think that the Onion does that well? I mean, is it the message? Is it the messenger? Is it because it's funny and not, stodgy, typical advertising? What is it to you?
So that article was actually, I think, something that was for a really, really solid campaign that we did with BMO Harris Bank.
Yeah.
And the reason why, what our playbook is really is something that, yes, there are agencies that do it also, but I feel like we do it 24/7, is hitting on truths like that is like the bullseye that we just hammer every single day. Relatable human truths. So
that I cannot agree with you more, because my personal opinion, I don't even think it's about millennials anymore. It's just relatable human truth. And it really doesn't
right.
matter the demographic. It's just good quality that you guys put out.
Yeah, and when we talk about this, I think that while I would like to say that the Onion Labs has a proprietary hold on relatable human truths, I think we do it better than maybe a lot of others out there. But there are people making things that have relatable human truths that resonate with people also. So what we just try and do is try and make it as relatable, the most relatable human truth as possible. And one thing is to be relatable to people. Another thing is to execute it in a way that is also entertaining. And that's where maybe our X factor comes in, where it's like, for BMO Harris, for instance, one of my good friends and coworkers, Eric Munn, wrote those spots, and they're coming out with an app, and it's targeted towards millennials, and they want to get millennials using the app. So the idea was, let's make kind of fun of app culture out there and show how BMO Harris has all these ridiculous new features on its app, like you can Snapchat yourself with an ATM filter on your face. It's like an ATM that shows up
Right.
on your face or something like that.
Right.
And so there's some interesting, quirky things that spot does, where maybe another agency may have weighted down with focus group testing and stuff like that. We didn't have to worry about who we offended by that, so-and-so's hand was crushed in an ATM way back when, and we can't put that, we can't do it. And that's what focus groups do. They kind of like filter out a lot of the really pulpy, funny stuff. And so that's something that we like to work around in the stuff that we do.
So that's a fair point, because I think we've had this conversation before, but you mentioned it even earlier, alluded to it, that a brand, or whether it be a brand or an agency, has got to have a vision of where they want to go with this, or at least some high level. But whether it's an agency delivering it for an advertiser or the advertiser, I don't know how you typically get approached, but what do you think? And I'm only going to ask you from a creative standpoint. I'm not asking you from the salesperson delivering impressions perspective, but what should the goal be for a brand when looking at how to use this kind of content? What should their goals, in your opinion, be for how to use the Onion to help them build their brand?
Sure. I think that the ultimate goal is to get, I do enjoy the business side of things. Like, I studied economics in college, so I'm not all just a goofy writer. I do really appreciate business sense and the business side of things. And for us, the biggest high-level thing is having a new customer, a reader saying, okay, I'm actually going to try this out. And they're exposing themselves to new eyeballs that they haven't already exposed themselves to as a brand. And that's like the ultimate win, obviously, to have an Onion reader say, you know what, A, that ad didn't suck, and B, I'm actually going to check them out and check out their brand. Or maybe if not check them out, I'm going to rethink my current impression of that brand, because this video made me sort of reconsider things. For me personally, like, I love seeing people. And it was one of my favorite things whenever Onion headlines are posted and whenever our videos go out is when people tag their friends.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest validation of the work, and I'll tell you why. Because it is saying it is actually hitting the relatability like bullseye on the nose. Because when people are tagging their friends and sharing with not so much sharing because we can't really measure. I who don't have like the back end dashboard can't really know how many things are being shared or whatever. But what I see in the comment section, XYZ people tagging their parents, their friend, their significant other, their sibling, and saying, you need to watch this. This is so you. I know that we hit a home run because it means that we've hit relatability. We've hit something that people can really connect with. And that's, from a creative standpoint, that's like my ultimate success there.
I think you're hitting home runs all the time, to be honest. I'm going to sound like a homer, but I've just looked at too much of your content and just love it. And it makes me laugh. And I think the thing that I personally love best about a lot of different brands that I've seen when I go to the Onion, even any type of brand that I wouldn't normally smile about, if I've seen one of your ads, it's made me smile about that brand, and that is so much stronger in how it relates to people. That is really immeasurable. So
yeah, and thank you, thanks so much, Shark. And I mean from a more philosophical standpoint of things, like it's a tough world. Not right now, but it's a very negative, it can be a very negative world out there, and there's a lot of stress and pressure and life things happening. I mean, I had some health issues earlier this year, and comedy was what really gets people through it. And it's something that, beyond just selling more widgets of a thing, it's more, I find it to be a very kind of disarming and kind of something that just people can't dislike. Maybe they aren't jumping up and down for joy and sharing it with all their friends, but at the very least they're not fast forwarding and saying, "Oh, this is so annoying" or whatever,
Yeah, life's too short. You gotta laugh.
Life's too short. You gotta laugh, and that's kind of the approach that I have to some of even the most serious brands. They come to us and they say, yeah, we want to add a little humor to our portfolio, and it's always great to see that. And you know what, even for brands that are out there, people listening to this, that their brand isn't just going to be a humor brand in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I reiterate, just finding something that's relatable and clever to your audience, whoever that might be. Maybe I've done a workshop where it was someone who's like, they ran a chain of very small like gyms, like fitness gyms in Chicago here, and humor isn't necessarily a fit for them, but getting relatable to their audience and kind of being on their level is what really resonates with them.
Well, Hassan, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I'd like to ask you, is A Shark's Perspective at least the best podcast you'll be on today?
This is the best podcast I will be on, like, ever. Yes. I'm pretty sure.
Awesome. All right.
Yes, I think I forget Ira Glass and This American Life. I mean, like, this is where it's going to be at.
This is it. So there was my conversation with Hassan Ali regarding comedic content, and Mr. Ali is the greatest. Let's think about 3 things we can take away from the conversation. First, everyone is creative in their own capacity. There's creativity in every job. You don't necessarily have to have a paint and easel in order to find a creative way to do something. Secondly, you've got to find the right kind of channel for funny content. If you have a serious brand, then you likely would not expect funny content on your social channels. But if you want to inject a little humor into your messaging, then finding the right channel, like The Onion, and leveraging their 6.5 million Facebook followers, for example, is essential. Context matters with content. And thirdly, humor brings relatability. Whether you're going after that bright, shiny millennial audience or not, humor can make your brand relatable. It's the most relatable human truth as possible, and being able to execute it as entertaining is essential. Humor boosts brand affinity and recall. If your focus is on marketing and advertising, then isn't that the goal? So if you're serious about being funny, then consider working with professionals who are funny, like at the Onion Labs. Life's too short, you gotta laugh. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our conversation regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. And join us where even some sharks are funny on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.